And again, just curious about what general policy is. Do hotshots often leave a second lookout if they were to go somewhere where the first lookout isn't around?
In this environment, they wouldn't have left anybody behind. They would have, if they would have left one, it would have been two. They made the determination that they were coming this way to go protect that structure. So they had completed their assignment and were moving to another location to complete that.
What time was it that, do you know, when Brendan was left behind, and then in relation to when the fire started running on this spot?
It's sometime after 4. I don't know exactly.
It all happened after 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
though, those events. Okay.
Yes.
Chief, you mentioned something about them building a fire to protect themselves from a safety fire to protect themselves from the wildfire that was burning. Can you talk about that? Because it's an interesting strategy. I think is very peculiar to wildland firefighters.
No, it's a very common occurrence, and what the backfiring situation was around the deployment, they didn't have enough to cut a larger space for a safety zone. And when you're cutting that stuff, you have to do stuff with it. You have to handle the brush and move it. You can't just leave it on the ground because that's not going to do you any good. So they're cutting and moving this chaparral and manzanita, and they're moving it off to the side. So to get a larger buffer and get away from the direct radiant heat or direct heat that's on them, they're lighting a fire out in that brush around them. So when the fire hits that, it gives them a buffer. It's not a flame front that's actually getting them. Do that around houses all the time to get a little buffer from the flame front coming in.
What gave you go ahead, sorry, were you still finishing?
No, that's fine.
What gave you the indication that they were using saws?
That we can tell by what's left here that there are cut stobs that are still up there. We know that where they placed the saws, that was one of the other aspects here. There were 3 saws that were placed far away from them because of the gas and stuff in it, far away from their deployment zone, up against the brush, and along with their fuel. So that was away from where they deployed. You know, one other thing that I failed to mention was we had air attack. We had an air attack up at that point in time too. That you talk about lookouts. You don't always depend on aircraft. That's a rule. But it was another set of eyes that was up there that was trying to relay information to them and stuff like that.
Okay. So when you mentioned that they were coming down likely to protect this structure here, was there any indication that they felt they were getting in danger as they were heading that way? Were they going for a safety zone over here, or were they heading for the site to protect that structure and then they got into trouble here?
You know, it's all speculation at this point in time. But in my heart, I would know that they're not protecting themselves. They're going to go and they're going to protect that ranch. It's very visible. I mean, we can look back and say, if you were standing here and you're a firefighter, where would you go? You're going to go there to protect that house, not necessarily protect themselves. They protected themselves as a last resort.
Chief, they came down. I mean, it all looks black right now. Is there a way you can tell, did the fire come down there and around here at the same time, or how did this area get engulfed in flame?
The fire behavior folks have said that it came around here, and if you look at that little swale here, it basically would lead you to believe that the fire came up this direction and up these little drainages here.
And they wouldn't have been able to get up that
they
way.
couldn't have. It may have taken them 20 minutes to get off that. It would have taken them 45 to get back up, or more to get back up that. So once you're committed downhill, there's really no way to make any time going uphill. So if they had fire here and they were trying to climb, they would have never made it. Their best option was where they deployed. If you look at how this is laid out, we're talking minutes when they made this decision. There's a little swale here, and then that back where they deployed, right in that, there's a little protection there. It comes up, and there's no doubt in my mind that they chose that point for a reason, because that's going to lift the fire off of them a little bit here. So you see, we come up to a kind of a little swale, and then it dips back down. Right in the middle there, where you can see kind of some lighter colored, that's where they deployed, right in that area there. Very, very tight area. So we know that, Eric and Jesse were thinking about that even in the situation that they were in. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize is, there's been some discussion, some didn't have their shelters on, and some didn't deploy their shelters. We know 19 shelters were deployed. And there's a process when you deploy shelters. The leadership is the last one in those shelters. I don't know what happened. Some of the firefighters did not have their complete shelter on them, but you can't even take that into consideration because the heat was so intense the shelters broke down. So we don't know anything about that, but we do know that they all deployed their shelters. And that's, something that's a number one thing. But the leadership, the superintendent, the captain, the squad bosses ensured that every one of their people was in their shelter before they got in. That's just policy and procedure.
Chief, how hot would it have been for those shelters to break down? And at what temperature does that start to happen?
I don't know the facts on that. I know that after 19 years and 5 days after Storm King, this is when this occurred, the Storm King situation. I know that after that event in Colorado, there was a new design for fire shelters, and it was based on that event. And so, they had the best of equipment. We didn't skimp on anything. One of those, they're referred to as tents or whatever, fire shelters, they're $500, and we have one on each person. And, they're the best of the best equipment that money can buy.
What's the process in setting up the escape route? You mentioned that Brendan McDonough had his route planned out. Is that something that's communicated back to supervisors that this is going to be our escape route, or how does that work?
In his case specifically, because he had a supervisor, he was, Eric and Jesse had made sure that they knew how they were going to get him out of that situation. Okay. So that his escape route was ensured. What the other aspect of it was that when the fire had basically flanked them over here, they were picking and choosing their escape route at that point in time. Due to the wind factor, they had no idea that they were going to be here. They thought they were going to be moving north. They had no idea what was behind them at this point in time.
Chief, there's a photo from 404 that shows the firefighters in the black.
Yes.
What's the risk versus reward that firefighters balance when they decide to leave the black and go into something like this, a deep crevice? Have you, thought about that risk versus reward? And how typical was their decision to come into something deep like this, leaving the black?
I've thought about that a lot, and it's ingrained in firefighters' mind. Why do firefighters run into burning buildings when it's just property? It's the same thing. These guys, their goal is life and property in life, to protect that, and then the vegetation and historical, things, artifacts and things like that. So, it's ingrained in them. They're not going to sit up there when there's potential for people to be at risk somewhere. Now, there's a lot of talk about risk management. The job of firefighter, wildland firefighter in particular that we're speaking of, is inherently dangerous. I mean, you're dealing with tools and fire and chainsaws, steep, rugged terrain and stuff like that. They wouldn't have done that if they thought they were risking their life. They thought that they had the option to make it. It's a time versus distance thing is what I'm seeing. It's a judgment thing that crews, they're making those decisions in Montana right now. There's hotshot crews that are doing that today. And that's the business that they're in. It was a judgment that they made. And like I mentioned before, I trusted their judgment. I trust their judgment today. It's a decision that was made at that time, and they thought that was the best outcome.
And you mentioned that they expected the fire to continue going north.
Yeah, I don't think they recognized or I know they knew that the fire, there was plenty of reports, thunderstorm outflows, things like that. I don't think that they were aware of how quick it moved And, you know, because we were seeing the fire moving 50 chains an hour, something like that, which isn't uncommon in this fuel type. And that changed to like 4 times that in a short period of time. And so what they were seeing during most of the day and what happened after, you know, 4:30 in the afternoon or whatever was such extreme fire behavior that nobody expected what occurred, the fire behavior that they were.
Is there confirmation that they did receive information concerning the outflows from the thunderstorms?
Yes, there is confirmation of that. There's no question about it.
Chief, I know they only had a very short time to pick a spot to deploy their shelters, but can you talk about how optimal a spot this is for shelter deployment? I guess the goal is to try and get as much of a seal around you as you can.
It was the best they had at the time. At the time, based, you know, on our thought that the fire was moving up this canyon, it's the best that they had at the time. There was no other options. There wasn't an option to escape uphill. This is where they had to deploy.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not questioning, you know, their judgment of deployment. I'm just curious as to the terrain here in judging the most an optimal location.
I think they picked the best location in this bowl. You know, you look at it and you study it. There's no place else that they could, you know, that they could go. I mean, you're in a box canyon here.
Darrell, just give us a sense from gut level. What's this spot mean to you?
I'm sickened. I'm saddened for, you know, 10 widows and 13 kids. I'm saddened for 19 friends. Just heartbroken about losing 19 adopted sons. I'm encouraged that we can all learn from this. I don't want them to have died in vain. I don't know what those lessons are right now. In my view right now, I'm still looking through the smoke. I'm not seeing things clearly. But I know that they would want us to all carry on. They would want the Granite Mountain Hotshots to live on and continue to protect property and you know, lives, and not to just grind to a halt and stop this, and learn those lessons. And what are those lessons? I think you know, it's going to have to be, you know, more awareness and judgment. And you know, I take it back to some very simple steps. If all the communities across the western United States had a priority on defensible space, if they were taking care of the property, we wouldn't have to put firefighters between homes. What we're doing in Prescott, we're trying to make it so that if a fire comes into Prescott, you don't need firefighters. It'll lay on the ground and it'll go around the houses. And if, you know, we can't forget that effort. That's really important.
You mentioned that the fire started moving, I think you said 4 times faster than it had been moving. Is that anything you've ever seen before, extreme behavior like that?
From my standpoint, this was the most extreme fire behavior I'd ever witnessed.
And is it something that you would train for, something changing that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, we always expect the unexpected. We always do that. When you put it in perspective of thinking, just the normal day-to-day logic, you think, not Yarnell. You know, this is Payson or Prescott or Show Low or something like that. So to put that in perspective, but you know, we do train for the unexpected. They've seen fire behavior, extreme fire behavior before. The Dosey fire 2 weeks earlier had extreme fire behavior on it.